Whether you're conquering professional exams or personal milestones, we welcome you to Beyond Clean's Confidence Certification, the 52-week test prep podcast series. With expert insights, actionable tips, and engaging discussions, we'll break down the toughest concepts in sterile processing and build your confidence every step of the way. Join host Sarah B. Cruz as she embarks on a mission to help you not just prep for tests, but craft your success story. And now your host, Sarah B. Cruz.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Confidence Certification, a 52-week test prep podcast series to equip you to take your sterile processing career to the next level. I'm your host, Sarah B. Cruz, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about celebrating study milestones. Don't wait until you pass your certification test to celebrate how awesome you are while studying to pass your certification test. And it wouldn't be a good last season episode if our work BFF Bobby Parker didn't join us today. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me back to wrap up this season. Excited to be talking about not waiting until the end. Here at the end of our season, I see what you did there, Sarah.
Yes, listen, we've been rolling out the pun and play on words all season. All right, Bobby, we can't shortchange them this episode. We got to give the listeners what they want, yeah? So and speaking of which, I bet you a lot of our listeners want to know, how did you celebrate when you passed your certification test? I remember you said that you did a lot of cram studying. You really wanted to get your raise, and that was a big extrinsic motivator for you. So was the paycheck your celebration? How did you do anything? What was that like?
So two things. First, I don't remember with crystal clear clarity. It's been a long time ago.
Oh, no.
But secondly, just a little bit about me. I am painfully cheap and certainly was 10 years ago. So I guarantee you that buying some kind of food was related to it. I probably got like a milkshake and chicken wings or something like that. Cause I'm not the kind of guy to spend money on that. But man, I'm sure I did after finishing that certification exam. How about you? What did you do to celebrate?
Well, I did the typical thing, like, the significant other and I went out, but I think I want to talk a little bit about how I celebrated signing up for the test. So as a lot of you have heard, I didn't pass my certification test multiple times. And by the time I was signing up for the last one, it was make it or break it time. Like I was seriously going to lose my job. So the whole I'm taking my certification test energy, that was gone. There was no excitement behind taking my certification test anymore. There was oh my God, I've literally left a job I was really great at as a vet tech. I was a bomb vet tech. I didn't need to become a sterile processing professional. I wanted to join this space, for health insurance and everything like that. So the whole I'm going to get certified energy, that was gone. And this fourth time I was getting ready to take the test and I was having a really hard time signing up for it. It was a lot. I'd print off the application, I'd fill it all out, and I would not give it to my manager to sign. And it would sit there. And I had so many copies of it on my counter at home that my significant other was like, Sarah, you've got 5 of these here. Are you going to sign up for this? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. They knew me well enough to know I was not going to do it. They actually put it in my bag for work. And when I went and had my lunch, it was in there with my lunch folded up. And I said, okay. So I went, my manager signed it, we submitted it. I signed up for the test. And when I got the email saying that I was ready to go in the testing facility, my significant other actually took me out for ice cream because I had signed up for the test. So a little bit of a different approach, but I literally needed to celebrate a milestone right there because I was so defeated at that point in time.
Wow, that's a really powerful story, Sarah. And to have to have people in your life that care about you and know you and know what buttons to push or what gentle suggestions to make to help you put one foot in front of the other and keep going, especially when you're feeling discouraged like that. That's a really powerful story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and he definitely knows what buttons to push, the good and the bad ones. So shout out to him. But yeah, definitely. And I think that encompasses the whole point of not waiting until the end, right? We have to recognize the work that we're doing in achieving this mountain of certification that we've put out in front of us while we're doing it. And even though this is the end of the season, the last episode, I still want to make sure that we're discussing test prep success and really understanding what a milestone is and how to effectively celebrate ourselves and our processes so that we stay engaged with what we're working on, right, Bob? Because if we're not a part of what's happening and we're just passively studying, what good is the information we're taking in?
Not much good at all. And so I love that concept of pausing along the way to see how far we've come, to celebrate, to take a deep breath before we put that next foot in front of the other one on a journey towards certification, but not just cramming material to dump onto a test, milestones along the way of accomplishing things for ourselves, for our professional development, for the good of our patients. I think this is a really good framework to think about as we're closing out this season for certification confidence.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at what a milestone is, like, let's just bring it, like, before we get all philosophical, Bobby, you know how I get. You're my work BFF. I get a little willy-nilly out there, right? But before we get all philosophical, right, a milestone is literally the distance between one point and another. And they physically did this with, like, stones back in the day. They would take stones and literally mark one point. And then when you saw the stone again, it would represent that you went a certain amount of distance, a milestone. Now, I don't know if it was always called a mile or if it was always like 3,600 and something feet. I don't know. I don't know what the distance is between here and there. And that's how it applies to you professionally. What is the distance between where you're going to what you're achieving, to where you started from? And only you can make those milestones that recognize your greatness along the way, right?
Yeah, and those milestones are really useful just, to our own motivation, like we mentioned, putting one foot in front of another. But to play on that analogy a little further, those milestones that are physically stones set by the road are there to be visible by everybody who makes that journey. And so I think there's a lot of power in making a big deal of the progress towards our professional development, because others are going to be walking that same path, and it's going to give them encouragement to keep going. One story that comes to mind, our department here in Louisville, we were working on trying to inspire people to get all 3 certifications, 3 at the time, because the CER, the endoscope reprocessing exam, didn't exist at the time. But we want to see how many technicians we could get to have all 3 certifications. And as we pitched that challenge to the team, the first 2 people who answered that call and got their 3rd certification were technicians that had been there for 20, 30 years, very experienced. They were not the young bucks who were still in the swing of test taking in college and things like that. And it was a big deal to them, but they were excited about being a part of something big. And let me tell you, we celebrated big time. We ordered the trophies. We pulled the department together. We called the director down and took a lot of pictures and things like that, because it was inspiring and it was really important. And I remember that experience very clearly and vividly in my mind. And I know that the technicians who walked that path afterwards were inspired by that same thing.
Yeah, and I think you just personified the whole point in having milestones and not waiting until the end to celebrate. It's that professional crescendo, Bobby. It's that boom, bang, I did it. Look at me. I did this thing. And you could be an introvert. You could be mild-mannered and still have that crescendo, maybe a little bit more privately. You can close the curtains. I don't know. I like to tell everybody I play an extrovert on TV, but, I do like to try and keep to myself myself when I can. But what you did in that situation was you created clear objectives for that group to work towards. So our main objective this entire podcast season was to, one, provide a place where sterile processing professionals could gain tools to prepare for tests and their certification, right? And we coupled it with some mid-session breaks filled with key concepts that they could actually take. We really wanted to provide a supplemental, supporting type of podcast that they could couple with their studying endeavors. So we're creating goals. So now we have the objective. We want you to pass your certification test. We've created goals. We've given you all of these resources to go ahead and do that. And now here are your milestones to go and achieve that. So a lot of the times it's just building up all of those milestones to reach a goal, to have that big objective and that professional crescendo, that celebration. That's phenomenal. That's great. I love that you guys got the trophies and everything like that. That's so cool.
Definitely was a good time. And so as we're thinking about goals, objectives, milestones, and how to pull all this together for our audience, I want them to be thinking about, while we take our next break here, about like, what do objectives and goals really look like in the journey towards certification? We'll be right back.
It's time for our mid-episode confidence boost, where we focus on a key sterile processing test concept. Now, there's no guarantee these concepts will be on the test that you take, but they are key concepts to the workplace and are discussed in the literature. Today we'll cover IFUs. Instructions for use are part of a regulatory mandate for appropriate labeling of medical devices. Hear that R word in there, folks. Regulatory, right? So it's a rule. All medical devices must have IFUs. They are not limited to how we use the instrument, though. They must include reprocessing information like decontamination, inspection, sterilization, and even sterility maintenance. They are created at the cost of the company by ways of scientific testing, evaluation, and trials that demonstrate that these items perform the way that they have been registered to in accordance to their 510K patent. So you can't just say our medical device does this and it absolutely doesn't do that. It's got to be in line with the IFUs and the instructions for use on how you use it. This information should be obtained for every device processed at the facility and maintained, whether that means it's in a binder or electronically. Regardless, it has to be able to be easily accessible to all frontline professionals and not just locked away in some manager's office. This is just the tip of the iceberg, or scissor, dare I say, when it comes to learning and understanding IFUs. So be sure to spend as much time as possible understanding this topic. That's a wrap for this week's mid-session confidence boost. Good luck. Hey everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us after our break. If you missed the first part of this episode, Bobby and I were talking a lot about celebrating our milestones and not waiting until the end to realize how hard we've been working to really test prep and pass our certification test. And listen, I love a good party. Don't get me wrong. But if I had to wait until the end of every party before I realized I was having a good time, I would be completely bummed out. Like, who goes to a party hoping it's a good time, right, Bobby? No, we don't want that. We want to know that when we are at the party, it's going to be a good time. So making sure that we understand what some of the milestones are that we're using to create the goals and objectives of passing our certification test is so important. But then half the battle in making those milestones, objectives, and goals is recognizing them when we achieve them. So it's like when you're running a relay race and they hand off the baton to the next person. That could technically be that you're moving on to your next goal in your objective of passing. Take a second and smell the roses, right? Oh, now if you're passing the baton and you're doing a relay race, you can't really stop. I get that. But let's not have that type of energy in our progression in celebrating our studying success and all the work that we're putting into it. If we just pause, like we've just learned about decontamination, which is a robust subject in our sterile processing careers and in our studying. You know, in my class, it's actually 256 slides. So we actually set some goals and objectives to help us keep engaged. And we stop and we say, hey, everybody, we just finished decontamination. It's like a little party that you want to celebrate. Yeah? I don't know, Bobby. What do you think?
I feel you. I'm a checklist kind of guy. I get motivated by those endorphins that happen when you click the little box and that check mark gets on there. And so, man, the last thing that you want to do when you're starting like a journey of certification testing is to never turn around. You don't want to get to the end and turn around and think, man, I came a long way. Like it should not be a surprise to you, like how much effort and how many things you accomplished along the way. It is a much more healthy approach to pause along the way, ruminate on what you've learned, celebrate those things, plan for the next section, and then go after it with all your gusto, you know, rather than just trudging along in the same kind of droning of monotonous studying. And you think, I can't wait until this is over, because guess what? The learning doesn't stop when you get the test. Like you're in this for the long haul in terms of learning and studying. So finding ways to learn to celebrate it and to love it, I think is really good advice.
You know, and it kind of sounds like you might be the expert on making sure we literally don't wait until the end. And I think you and my significant other would vibe out on that, Bobby, because like the way that he made sure that I didn't procrastinate and actually signed up for my test is a really great example of not waiting till the end to start. Right. So I feel like you'd be the expert on that. So how can we, because I'm a procrastinator, listen, what can we do? Later. So Bobby, tell us, how do we literally not wait until the end to start?
Well, I don't know if I can cure anybody of their procrastination. And I can certainly resonate with those feelings, but I've seen that a lot in sterile processing when new technicians wait until the 11th hour of the 11th month to begin studying. And it puts a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure on when it comes down to the deadline and you have your exam scheduled, and it's not just pass or fail, it's pass or lose my job. Nobody needs that kind of pressure, right? And so we certainly don't want to be put in that situation. So why do people do it? I think what we're getting at here is the main reason. I think fear of failure, or just maybe underestimating like what is involved in this journey, just keeps them from trying. And so it's much safer, much simpler. It feels like to prefer just not to think about it, to put it aside and say, yeah, I know it's important, but I'm going to focus on this thing over here instead. And what they thrive on is like the adrenaline of due dates. And so they're going to wait until like the 11th hour of the 11th month. So breaking that up into smaller achievable goals and celebrating those milestones along the way gives you a little shot of that checkbox endorphins and can be really powerful in just getting started. And so, yeah, don't wait until the very end. Not only don't wait until the end to celebrate, but please don't wait until the end to start. That's not going to go well for you.
And that really resonates with my procrastinator heart. You know, and sometimes when we procrastinate, it just puts everything on us all at once too. So now we are trying to learn our job. We're trying to sign up for the test. And now I need to study decontamination. Well, you know, I had to rush through that. So maybe I need to study more time on assembly, you know. So I think that really speaks to not just the procrastination aspect, but the stackability of responsibilities and the condensing of our objectives and milestones and almost making them work against us. So I think that is very tangible advice. And my procrastinator heart is almost mad that you spoke to it so clearly, because I think when you make bite-sized successes, it actively negates looking at things as a whole, which is frankly a procrastinator's best friend. If I look at it as the big picture all the time, I won't ever feel bad if I don't start, you know? So
yeah. Absolutely. And having those small goals along the way also helps you kind of gauge your progress. I always got concerned when I had new technicians in our department and I asked them, hey, how's your certification studying going? And they're like 7 months in and they kind of give you the fake smile and nod and say, it's going great through their teeth. It's like they haven't started. They haven't started. And so having something to gauge your progress to know, like, I need to be in 3 months out to this point. So like, let's figure out a rhythm that works for me. It will help remove a lot of the stress of knowing like you've got this big, cloud of certification requirements over your head all the time. Just knowing that you've got a plan is really useful.
Yeah. And, I think you speak to two problem solving abilities there where it's, your milestones are examples of celebrations. So you don't have to just throw pasta at the wall and hope it sticks like everything you're learning in your sterile processing textbook, right? You can literally build out different aspects and the different concepts you want to learn and use time if that works best for you to know where you have to be. You don't have to hope you'll be there because hope is not a strategy, right? It's making sure that you've actually built something out for yourself to recognize how far you've come. And then I also like how you speak on not gauging yourself by your progress because we have to remember the thing about the finish line, okay? The finish line is always the furthest away in any quest, right? It's always going to be the furthest away, even when you're slowly encroaching on it. There's a reason why marathon runners run past the finish line and don't stop before the finish line or slow down before the finish line, because it's in those last few minutes before they cross that will literally make the difference between them passing it first, second, or third. So if we take that mentality and push through the finish line because we've been celebrating ourselves along the way, we'll be able to recognize the total picture because we've gauged ourselves by our progress.
That's really good advice. You heard it here first, folks. The finish line is always furthest away. So, Sarah, it sounds like what you're encouraging people to do is to be their own biggest fan, to celebrate themselves, to show themselves some honor and respect. Do you have any tips, tricks, examples of, you mentioned the decontamination chapter, but anything else that you've seen be really effective for people who are trying to find ways to make some small wins that they'll enjoy along the way?
Bobby, I think that's a great segue into the final homework assignment of our 13 episodes. So when we come back with the next group, because like I say in the beginning of every single podcast episode, this is a 52-week long series, okay? So these first 13 are just the start, all right? So when you come back and join us for episode 14, I want to make sure that you have some really great concepts to show that you honor yourself, that you have that RESPECT, dare I say. So I want to assign the homework assignment of actually making a list of your professional aspirations. I would like you to list all the goals you want to achieve and how you think certification will help you with that. Because remember, folks, it doesn't just stop with one certification. No. The Confident Certification podcast also helps speak to those additional certifications.
So whether you've got lofty aspirations of being a department supervisor or a manager or even president of a sterile processing association someday, or if right now your sights are set a little bit narrower on completing that first certification and surviving your first year in a sterile processing department, I think this is really great advice, writing down your personal career aspirations and particularly what you're going to do to celebrate along the way. Love that advice, Sarah.
Absolutely. And, Bobby, it's bittersweet, my work BFF, but I have a feeling you'll be hanging out with us in the next group of episodes. Yeah, you'll be back, right?
Don't threaten me with a good time.
All right. Awesome. Listen, thank you all again so much for being a part of this professional goals and objectives for myself in sterile processing. The frontline professional and who contributes to our industry is a huge part of that. You are my professional development journey, and I couldn't be happier to celebrate all of your confident certification testing. Thank you guys again for allowing me to be a part of that. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. For more sterile processing education and resources, make sure to visit beyondclean.net or follow Beyond Clean on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to check out over 1,000 SPD-related videos at youtube.com/beyondclean. If you have any questions or comments for the show, you can reach out to info@beyondclean.net. Finally, make sure to download the Beyond Clean mobile app on the Apple and Android app stores so that you don't miss a future episode of any of the other awesome Beyond Clean podcasts. My name is Sarah B. Cruz, and you've been listening to Confidence Certification. Until next time, keep fighting dirty and pass that test with confidence.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast series are of Sarah B. Cruz only and do not represent the companies she works for or collaborates with.